You're listening to The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals, Episode 5. This is where we love to talk about tips, tricks, and inspirations for anyone hosting guests in unique structures. We tackle the A to Z of turning your passion into profits. And today, I'm talking about how farmers and landowners are using glamping to manage income fluctuations. So let's get started. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you here. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to the lovely Rosie Hopkins from the Business Barn. We met recently at the Glamping show in the UK, but have been working together now for some time, sharing tips and content for our mutual clients. At the show, we ran out of time to talk through everything we wanted to. So as that's exactly what this podcast is all about, I invited her on the show to continue our conversation. So today I asked Rosie how farmers are using glamping and unique holiday rentals to manage income fluctuations that they experience throughout the year. We talked through her perspective of why glamping is proving to be so popular with farmers, what some of their biggest struggles have been, and some amazing stories of success that she has witnessed. Now, Rosie works with the Business Barn, which is an online portal for those in the UK in the agricultural world. They are a collaborative team who are working hard to support the farming community and the businesses that operate within it. They mainly focus on diversification and the potential for this for farmers and rural business owners. The main purpose is to guide them in their journey, and the website has a wealth of knowledge with lots of ideas, inspirations, business advice and guidance. Rosie is the day-to-day manager of the business who has been with them now from the start and helps to develop their future plans and is also a wealth of knowledge. And that's why I invited her on the show today. So without any further delay, I'm going to hop on over to my conversation with Rosie. Hi, Rosie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know you have heaps of value to share with any landowners or farmers listening today, and I'm so grateful that you've given me your time to be on the podcast. And welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, and looking forward to sharing what wisdom I have.
Thank you. And as we know, glamping isn't just about being under canvas. It is all about unique structures as well. And the whole ethos, I suppose, is about people being able to engage with nature whilst they're staying away on their holidays in a place of beauty. So first, as somebody who is very involved in the farming industry, let me start by asking you a little about your views of the glamping industry as it stands today. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the glamping industry as a whole is a really fun and dynamic industry. And I think there's a wealth of opportunity out there that people are already tapping into. But I also still think there's a huge sort of potential and opportunity out there for people. A lot of people kind of band around the idea that have we reached that ceiling when it comes to glamping? And speaking to people, I don't think we have, and I still think there's a potential, huge growth there. I think there's a stat floating around, I think from the International Glamping magazine or something, that the value of the sort of glamping and camping industry will be worth 3.2 billion by 2020. And I think there's still huge potential there. But I think the main factor is that people will have to be and remain really competitive in the industry. And we were at the Farm Business Show a couple of weeks ago, and there's a gentleman presenting on glamping there, and he made a valid point that people who are looking to go into glamping have either got to appeal to that kind of rustic end of the market or that really high end of the market. There's no kind of in between. And by high end, I mean kind of the real luxuries. So having your sort of flushing toilets, running water, hot water, luxury interiors, bed linen, all that kind of thing, compared to the rustic where you kind of really scale back. And again, as you said, Sarah, people connecting back to nature. So that could be sort of outdoor camping, cooking on the stove, no electric, that sort of thing. So although it is a great industry with a huge potential, I think people have got to start thinking about how they can remain competitive, and as well also how they could potentially add value to existing camp or glamping sites too. I think that's a big area that people could sort of roll into as well.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't agree more with what you've just said. And it's really interesting how we can learn so much from different countries also going through this process of discovering glamping and where it's going and seeing the industry develop. And having just got back from the Glamping Summit, which was held in the US, the same thing is happening there. You know, that people are questioning, are we at the top of the market now? Are we now fully, are there so many competitors here that there's no room? But overwhelmingly, everyone was saying, no, this is the beginning, this is going to grow because of online travel agents such as Airbnb, Glamping Hub, and so many other online travel agents. It's kind of opening up the possibilities for individuals with land and also farmers who, they are land rich and are potentially looking for ways to diversify their income. And the glamping business model really seems to allow for the farmers to use it as a way of, evening things up and giving them a better business strength. But from your perspective, why do you think it's proving to be such an interesting business model for farmers?
Yeah, I think the main driver, again, this can go two ways, but for farmers, as you rightly said, who are sort of quite land rich most of the time. Again, that's a generalization, but most farmers are. Glamping is quite an accessible industry that they can sort of go into. So from looking at a financial point of view and a planning point of view, glamping is actually quite once you're up and running, it's kind of a low capital, again, depending on how you pitch it, low risk investment that for farmers can be quite appealing. And that's where I think we've got so many people or so many farmers, landowners who are actually sort of driving through with that. And from a planning point of view, even people sort of in greenbelt areas and areas of outstanding natural beauty, although planning can sometimes be harder in those areas, it's still not impossible. And I think that's why, compared to other industries, glamping is seen as one that is kind of up there in popularity amongst farmers and landowners.
There's been some really interesting discussions in my Facebook group recently with farmers. When I asked the question, who are the members here who are farmers, and how have you used glamping to diversify your income and change the way you're using your land? Yeah. And it was really interesting how many people who responded said that they started with maybe one canvas structure or just a couple of canvas structures just to test it and experiment on land that they had but wasn't really very good for crops or hadn't proved to be very profitable for other methods of farming or whatever. And now, a few years later, they were looking at actually reducing a bit of what they were doing with their farming to increase the amount that they were able to offer with their glamping because it had proved to be so profitable for them. And it allowed them to generate an income at those times that they maybe weren't generating an income, because that's the time, the complexities of farming and when the income comes in. And so it was a really interesting discussion around those issues. And I was so interested myself to find out that people were actually starting small, but finding out that it was so good for them in their situation, they were increasing it. But I was also quite interested in, and wondered if you had any input on this, about what you think is the most popular form of glamping in terms of farmers, and why you think that is.
Ooh, now that is a tricky one. So I think it very much depends on the market people are targeting. And this is, excuse me, this is something that when people are thinking about going into glamping, it's very important to think of that market that you want to target. Because again, we've got a sort of growing market for young couples. We've got a growing market for groups. We've got those who are looking for a kind of romantic getaway, whatever it might be. And I think that very much depicts a kind of the type of glamping you go into. And so from what's most popular, I think that's almost quite a tricky question to answer, because you really have to think of where you're located within the country. Are you in a tourism area? Are you in an area that can attract people that isn't necessarily on the sort of tourism radar? And kind of match that to your offering. Through the business plan, we have a sort of search function where obviously people can search what they want for, and we can then sort of use that to gain insight in terms of what people are searching for. And time again, people are searching for glamping, camping, and that sort of thing. And from a sort of structure point of view, the most common forms of structure that people search for are in relation to tree houses, yurts, and pods. So that would kind of lead me down the road of saying potentially they are the most sort of popular structures. But again, it very much depends on what market you are targeting in terms of what sort of structure and offering you deliver.
So in terms of the farmers I know from experience are incredibly clever business individuals. They are very business focused, and because they've been doing this for many years, in general, that's my experience anyway. And so, but this is moving into something that is potentially very different from what they've ever done before. Not in every case, of course, there's going to be people who would have had experience in the tourism industry, but this is quite a big shift away from that business thinking around crops and everything else that they need to think about, animals and so on, to now thinking about tourism and serving the guest and the tourist in a way that will make them happy, and is maybe not necessarily something that comes naturally to everybody without some experience of it. So in terms of your feedback that you've got from people you've been in contact with, do you think they have any struggles, and what do you think their biggest struggles are about setting up something like this on their land?
I think in terms of the sort of business acumen, I think you're 100% right. Farmers, landowners are very sort of business savvy. They know what they're doing, and they've got sort of multiple arms in multiple disciplines. And to an extent, many of those sort of skills can be transferred. But you're absolutely right in terms of this is a totally different industry. And for many, they are starting a brand new business that is separate to the farm business. So although it might be on the same farm, the same land, for many, they will treat it as a separate entity. And particularly with a sort of a glamping site, a camping site, I think one of the struggles and one of the things people kind of underestimate is actually the time and resource that has to go into starting that business and running that business. We often within the office and when I'm doing sort of other presentations and things like that, we often categorize diversification into two separate categories. There's your passive category and your proactive category. Your passive category are those sort of projects that once they're up and running, they can almost run themselves. So when I sort of refer to that, I'm talking about sort of renewables, solar energy, wind power, and that sort of thing. Whereas the proactive projects are those that are, as I've just mentioned, a whole nother sort of separate entity. They need a lot of time and resource to get up and running, and keep running. And glamping, I would say, glamping and camping falls into that sort of proactive category. So I think the sort of time and resource element is one side of things. And I think you have got to like working with people. You've got to have a passion for people. When it comes to glamping, you are going to have people ringing you, asking what you might think is silly questions, but to them it's an important question. You are going to have people coming and knocking on your door, and potentially, sort of, although it might be sort of separate from the farmhouse or the farm, you may have people straying onto the farm and the farmhouse and that sort of thing. So you have got to have a passion for people. You've got to have some patience. And interestingly, I revert back to the presentation at the farm business show that we listened to. And the chap said there that a lot of when people are coming to a glamping site, their experience and what really stands out in sort of TripAdvisor reviews and that sort of things is the meet and greet they receive. So when they turn up. So, and that's actually what makes their stay. So if a farmer, again, it happens, you've just had some cattle out or you've had an interference on the farm, you've then got people coming down the drive to come into and take up one of your glamping sites or coming onto the glamping site, whatever it might be. You have got to suddenly be able to switch your sort of character into a happy-go-lucky character, which for some people they can do it, for others it can be more tricky. And I think, again, that customer service element and point is quite an important factor to consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can almost see in my head there a farmer who might be chasing some pigs that escape through the fence and then having to deal with feeding the cattle or something. And then suddenly some guests walk down the drive expecting to be, greeted with this energy that, that they really expect because they paid to stay somewhere.
Absolutely.
And so I can totally see the challenges there. And it must be quite hard for people who maybe aren't used to that. But I know that there has been so many successes because I've heard about them in my Facebook group, and as well when I speak to, so a lot of my members, I take them through a process of understanding the guest experience and how is that from the beginning, the very beginning, from when they actually see their advert to stay in their glamping site to actually arriving and staying to the very end and becoming a customer and hopefully a repeat customer. And that whole journey of the guest experience is so important, which is why it's, I spend an awful lot of time with my members focusing on that. But I know that there have been some great successes, and I'm interested if you've had any experience of witnessing those successes in this industry, glamping industry, merging with the farming industry, and do you have any case studies? So have you seen any successes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do run some sort of case studies on people who have started their own sort of farm diversification project or rural business. And one that comes to the forefront in my mind is a family who have started again, as you said previously, they started very small, on a very small scale. They were landowners, they had some land, they bought some land, sort of 40 acres, I think, and they sort of started out with a bit of a livery yard and were dabbling in camping to start with. And they opened one of the paddocks up to sort of a camping site, to start with. And their neighbouring farmer, he had run a sort of caravan and camping site previously, but he had closed it down for other reasons. But he was still getting inquiries through in terms of people wanting to come and stay. And so the neighbouring farmer rang up, the family I'm talking around is Petruth Paddocks down in the southwest of England, and basically said, we're having these inquiries through, we can't do it anymore, but I think it would be a great opportunity for you to go into. And so over the years, they've kind of gradually bolted on and added experiences and facilities to that people who've come to the site, come camping, have wanted. And their ethos is very much getting people to, as we've said before, kind of go back to nature and get away from it all. And at Petruth Paddocks, they really encourage that. So they've now grown it into, I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but they have thousands of people through their door every year. They have several sort of camping paddocks where people can go free range camping, they call it. So people can pitch their tents, their caravans, and off they go. And they've also introduced some glamping pods as well. So again, and they're different levels of glamping pods. So some you just go and you have to take all your bed linen and sort yourselves out and do it that way. And then some are more of a high end where the family will provide the linen. You have your teas and coffees and that sort of thing. So they have been very clever in terms of starting small, and they've grown it. They've watched the market. They've understood what people have wanted. They've learned from their mistakes, and they've kind of implemented procedures over the years to really help them grow that business. And for me, sort of in answer to your question of this, they have been one of the case studies that have really sort of stood out in my head. And again, I met Jules at the Farm Business Innovation Show again a couple of weeks ago, and he's again looking for new ideas to kind of keep adding to what they've created. So again, a really innovative family that have really thought about the market and their offering, and trying and have thought about how they can target each market differently.
I love that. I love that they started small and they've grown and they've added to it. And I think that's something that I talk about a lot in the Facebook group. Again, only literally yesterday was doing the same, talking about when people don't quite understand how you might be able to finance something like this and a diversification such as this. I always suggest strongly that they build a business plan which allows for phases. So phase one might be, a small amount of offerings. And then once that's up and running and successful, that helps to build on phase 2, 3, 4, and however many phases might come in the future. But if you were to say to farmers listening now who might want to delve into this as a potential income stream, what would be the first bit of advice that you would say to them to encourage them that what they should do and how they should do it? What, from your perspective?
I think my number one, the first thing I would say to anyone listening who is thinking about it, is to do your research. And I know I've said it before, but I think it's fundamental to actually a successful business and a successful sort of years ahead. If you can spend the time doing the research, so that might be going and staying in some other glamping units, some sites yourselves, trying out the different structures and what's available, seeing what people are sort of offering on their glamping sites, asking people in the local area what they would like to see. I think the more knowledge you can build and the more research you can do, and although that might take a little bit of time, and it should take some time, I still think that's a really valuable time well spent, I should say, in terms of actually starting your journey. So I think that would be there's lots of things that people need to do before they start going sort of headfirst into their glamping, new glamping venture. But I think the research is the fundamental priority that people need to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying it out as well, because then they'll know what they like and the service level that they enjoyed, and the value that they feel they receive from the money they spent to stay somewhere. And so they'll be able to duplicate that level of value in the way that feels good for them. And I think all of us as business owners, we feel that we need to give value to be able to feel confident about our businesses and to feel that we're actually offering what we say we're offering. And if someone hasn't actually stayed in a glamping site, then how do they know that? How do they know the different types of glamping that's available? Because they are extraordinarily diverse in the different types of glamping. So as you said earlier, there are very simplistic, rustic glamping, and then there's very high-end, luxurious glamping. And so to know where they want to be in terms of their offer is super, super important, as well for their own confidence that they're offering something great to their guests. But I know that there will be people listening, and I know that this podcast has an audience all around the world, but you have a focus for the UK, and I know that there will be a few people listening who would be interested to know if there are any grants available. I'm sure there are grants around the world in different countries, but in terms of the UK, do you know of any grants or support that's available for farmers to help diversify into this type of service?
Yeah, so this year the industry's been quite lucky in terms of there have been a couple of pockets of money that farmers, landowners have been able to kind of dabble in and sort of apply to. And one of those is the sort of leader funding programme. Now, this is very region specific. There is various pockets of money available across the country. And there's the primary one that sticks in my mind this year is the leader funding programme. And that is very much led by your local enterprise partnership. And they're called the LEP groups. And they are very instrumental in sort of determining in how their pocket of money through the leader programme is spent. However, I would encourage you, again, wherever you are in the sort of refers to in England, to get in touch with your sort of local county council. They can then put you in touch with your local enterprise partnership and to see whether there is any sort of leader funding still available. In addition to that, again, going back to your county councils and also your local growth hubs, they will also be aware of any additional funding that you might be able to tap into. So every county or every region will have a specific pot of money they will be spending in different ways. And so I'd really urge you to sort of get in contact with them if you are looking for funding, as they might be able to point you in the direction of sort of localised funding opportunities. And there are opportunities out there, so I really would encourage you to do that, because you'll be amazed at, it's not shouted about, that you would be amazed at what you might be able to find. So I would if you're listening and you're kind of interested in going into the glamping, have a route around and see what you may be able to find.
That's excellent advice, because people, what a shame it would be if this grant was available for them and people weren't making the most of what's there. So yeah, putting a bit of time into researching that into a specific area is such a valuable use of time. And I couldn't agree more with that. And Rosie, that's so fantastic that you've spent time with us today. I'm so grateful. And maybe just finish by telling the listeners a bit more about the Business Barn, and I will be linking it up in the show notes, so how people can get into contact with you. If you just give a quick overview of the Business Barn and what you do.
Yep. So thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to be part of the podcast today. It's been brilliant. But yes, the Business Barn itself is an online platform that we've specifically designed for farmers who are looking to diversify, or people who are looking to start their own rural business. So that could be glamping, that could be a specialised farming enterprise, that could be sort of a craft enterprise, whatever it might be. We've created a kind of online go-to resource that people can go to get more information, ideas and inspiration, advice and guidance for actually starting their business journey. So I would urge you to go and have a look at the website if you get a moment. It's simply www.thebusinessbarn.co.uk. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we're also on LinkedIn. So if you fancy having a look, do engage with us on social media, because it would be great to hear from you.
That's brilliant, Rosie. Thank you so much. We've worked together now for some time doing various bits and pieces. And I hope very much to work with you again in the near future, and certainly to meet you at one of the many events that happen around the UK. And I'd love to thank, on behalf of my audience, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to hearing from you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you again, Rosie. And also thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And if you found this useful and enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Check out the show notes on inspiredcamping.com. So just go over to inspiredcamping.com, and in the podcast section there, you can see all of the previously published podcasts and their show notes. You can also check out my signature course, From Overwhelmed to Overbooked, a masterclass teaching you the secrets to attracting more guests and commission-free bookings. I'd love to talk to you more. If you want to carry on the conversation outside of the podcast, please head over to Facebook and look for the Glamping Business Group. And that's where myself and almost 3,000 businesses now are all having a conversation to try and improve what we do on a daily basis, and also to receive support for anything that might happen during the working day. It's great to feel that you have a team around you, and that Facebook group is certainly a team. See you very soon.